Unchecked biological multiplication forces a total reconfiguration of the surrounding resource network. We often equate ecological success with abundance, but a stable ecosystem is defined entirely by the mathematical and environmental constraints imposed upon it. To understand how these networks survive, we have to examine constraints across three distinct scales: single isolated populations, complex plant communities, and invasive disruptions. Simply measuring the raw accumulation of biological matter, the total biomass, gives an inaccurate read on a system's health. True stability is determined by the efficiency of energy distribution and the absolute physical limits of the environment. Consider the simplest ecological scenario: a single species introduced to an environment with abundant initial resources. When populations are small and resources are largely untapped, they exhibit exponential growth. This chart maps a starting fish population of 250 over time. Assuming a 0.8 growth rate, the trajectory fires sharply upward. This horizontal line represents carrying capacity. Set at 417, it marks the absolute resource limit, forcing the curve to decelerate and flatten. This deceleration occurs because per capita energy availability drops, as the number of individuals competing for the same resources increases. The mathematical limit provides the mechanical friction required to prevent a population from outstripping its food source and initiating a total crash. When we apply these energy constraints to a multi-species environment, like competing plant life in a grassland ecosystem, the mechanics become more intricate. The intuitive hypothesis is straightforward. Undisturbed, tall grass creates a dense canopy, blocking light to the forest floor and choking out other plant life. But field data reveals a paradox. When plots are clipped to simulate grazing, both the total accumulated biomass and the light density at ground level decrease. Yet species richness actually increases. This comparison explains the discrepancy. Here is an unclipped plot next to a clipped plot. On the left, dominant plants hoard thick, vertical energy pathways, starving the network. On the right, without dominant structures, the energy grid rewires into dense, branched pathways, distributing resources equitably. The physical act of grazing continuously removes the top tier of vegetation, stripping the dominant species of their ability to hoard the system's energy. The forced energy distribution directly drives species richness. Physical disturbance serves as a vital ecological constraint. Looking at the Hudson River, we can observe what happens when an organism circumvents local constraints entirely. An invasive species, like the zebra mussel, is defined by its ability to critically destabilize native energy dynamics, not simply its geographic origin. This food web maps the original energy grid. At the base, phytoplankton act as primary producers, feeding native mussels and zooplankton. When zebra mussels are introduced, they exert massive resource competition. They rapidly drain the phytoplankton supply, physically starving the native consumer populations. This physical displacement is stark. As seen here, large native mussels are entirely crowded out, their shells covered by the sheer density of invasive competitors. With the primary producers depleted, the system forces a compensation. To keep the upper tiers alive, the network shifts reliance to non-chlorophyll bacterial plankton, a secondary energy source that demands entirely new pathways. This lower efficiency baseline ripples upward. Changes in prey availability directly thin out open water predator fish populations. Systemic disruption occurs strictly when an organism successfully severs a foundational energy pathway and forces the entire food web to rewire. Across these three models, we observe the exact same mechanical reality. Ecosystem ecology operates strictly as a study of energy economics. Carrying capacity applies mathematical breaks to isolated populations. Physical disturbance optimizes the distribution of that energy across competing communities. And unconstrained competition at the primary tier forces a full systemic rewrite. Assessing an environment requires us to stop tracking raw biological accumulation and map the constraints acting upon it. Environmental limits provide the architectural framework that allows an ecosystem to exist at all.